feel like a lot of people undermine the importance of mental illnesses, and this is exactly why they should never be taken lightly. Audie Sanchez was a 33-year-old mother of a 3-week-old baby. She had severe mental illnesses but was never given proper care for them. She started to hear voices in her head and became very paranoid. These voices were telling her that she needed to get rid of her baby because the devil was inside of him. Once she started hearing these voices telling her these things, she tried to admit herself into a psychiatric hospital, but they denied her, sent her home with some medication, and told her, hey, you're crazy, but you're gonna have to deal with it by yourself. Audie was aware that these thoughts weren't normal, so when she would feel like she might do something bad to her son, she would give him to her sister, but her sister would give him back to Audie after she thought Audie was good again. Although she knew Audie was having thoughts about harming her own son, she knew about Audie's severe mental illnesses as well. Their whole family did. There were several warning signs, but the baby was never taken out of her care, and this led to a devastating outcome. One night, Audie was staying with her mother and sister after she got in a fight with her baby father. Audie's sister had woken up to some loud screaming. It was Audie screaming after she had cut her son's head off and ate part of his brain. This is part 2 of why you should always take mental illnesses seriously. After Audie Sanchez had decapitated her 3-week-old son and ate part of his brain, she quoted, "I didn't mean to do it. He made me do it," referring to the devil. She first started hearing voices in her head when she took drugs for the very first time. Do not do drugs, kids. I'm telling you, you're gonna end up decapitating somebody. The saddest part about all of this is that this could have been prevented and that baby could have still been alive if people would have taken her mental illness seriously. Literally just 6 days before this happened, she had met with the counselor and told them that she had voices in her head telling her to harm her own baby. The counselor claimed this was her postpartum psychosis, which is when a mother responds negatively to her pregnancy, sometimes feeling like she needs to harm her child. The counselor did report that Audie needed mental evaluation, but the hospital didn't see the severity of the situation because the counselor failed to mention that Audie was hearing voices specifically telling her to harm her own child. Once they evaluated her, they concluded that she just heard voices and had hallucinations. In court, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Story time about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So, when I graduated college, I moved into a new apartment. When I first got there, I was moving my things in, and my neighbor introduced himself and helped me move a couple of things upstairs. After we had got done, he asked for my number, but I told him I wasn't really looking for a relationship. But he said, let's just swap numbers just in case, a fire happens. So I gave him my number, and I really didn't think nothing of it. Maybe a week later, he starts knocking on my door and giving me gifts just about every day, like teddy bears and flowers. Then maybe about 2 weeks later, I told him to stop because I wasn't really interested in him. So the next day, I wake up to make coffee and take out trash. When I pass my living room, the teddy bear gift that my neighbor gave me makes a click noise. When I quickly rip the teddy bear open, it's a camera inside. Like for part 2 about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So, like I said earlier, the teddy bear gift that my neighbor had gave me makes a clicking noise. When I quickly rip the teddy bear open, it's a camera inside, and I go into a panic mode. Out of nowhere, there's a knock on my door, and it's my neighbor. He says, "Good morning, it's me again. You left your trash too close to the curb, so I moved it for you." I realized that my door was still open, so I try to run over and lock the door, but he just opens it. I yell at him, telling him to get out. He closes the door behind him and says, "That's no way to talk to a neighbor." I start backing up. He looks over and sees that I ripped the teddy bear apart. I didn't know what else to do, so I just ran to my room. And he chases after me and pulls my hair. Like for part 3. Part 3 about the psycho neighbor that stalked me. So he comes in, I run into my room, and he chases after me. Before I could get up, he pulls onto my hair and starts dragging me towards the kitchen. I saw the coffee that I had made earlier, and I was able to pick it up and throw the hot coffee in his face. He starts screaming loud, and I took that chance to run into my room and lock the door. I immediately start calling the police, and from there, it sounded like he ran out of my apartment. When the cops came, they're doing an investigation, and all the gifts that he gave me all had cameras in them. And when I told them about my neighbor, they did some digging, and come to find out, that man wasn't even my neighbor. He didn't even live at the apartment complex.
Am I wrong for telling my friend I don't want to be her bridesmaid anymore? My friend Mary and I have known each other since we were children. We've grown apart over the past few years, but she still considers me important enough to make me a bridesmaid. Her wedding is set to be in 3 weeks. One reason why I sort of distanced myself from her was because of her treatment of my relationship. My boyfriend Jack and I have been together for 3.5 years. He's a wonderful person, and there is no doubt in my mind that this is the man I want to marry. But Mary is under the impression that Jack is too good for me. Jack comes from a very wealthy background. His parents are certainly very wealthy. He was practically guaranteed a lavish life from the moment that he left the womb. I grew up in a low-income neighborhood, often wondering where my next meal was or how I was going to help pay the bills at a young age. Jack is considered to be conventionally attractive, always looking like he should be on some sort of magazine or billboard. Jack's good looks and background have led Mary to believe that Jack deserves better than me, as according to her, there's no way I could have pulled someone so attractive and rich. It's pretty disheartening to hear those things constantly, and it does take a toll on you and the friendship. Whenever Jack is around, she's quite polite and respectful, never once making these comments. Eventually, the comments did stop. Mary invited me for lunch with her fiancé and his friend Gary. From the moment I arrived, Mary and her fiancé were consumed in their own conversation, paying no attention to the both of us. It was fine, as Gary seemed to be a great guy and we easily chatted. He asked me why I was single, and I told him that I was in a happy, committed relationship. He was very taken aback by my answer. He told me that Mary had set up a blind double date of sorts for the both of us. I was very confused and slightly angry. I didn't want to be confrontational at lunch, especially in public, so I just carried on with the lunch. Luckily, Gary wasn't upset and ended up making a few jokes about the whole ordeal. I called Mary later on in the day and asked her a ton of questions about why she thought it was okay to do that. At first, she tried to deny it, but then she tried to justify it by saying that Gary is a man who's more in my league, and since he was also a groomsman, we needed to get to know each other better. I was shocked at her bluntness, so I just told her that I didn't want to be her bridesmaid anymore. Granted, it was a pretty impulsive decision, but I still stand by it. Mary didn't take it well, trying to apologize and saying that it was a mistake. It's been a few days and her fiancé has been texting me asking me to suck it up for the wedding. I feel petty and conflicted right now. So, am I wrong for what I did?
Story time on how I cheated all throughout high school and got valedictorian. Now, this story time is not to encourage others to cheat. I just want to explain how I did it. So, when it came to high school education, I cared less about actually learning the material they taught in school, but more about getting a good grade. So, if you're like me, this video is for you. In school, I created a bunch of friends with all types of people, but not just anyone, but with people that had the same class with me. Even if they weren't in the same class period, if I knew we had the same teacher, guarantee you were on my roster of friends. In the beginning of the year, I sort of created an agreement with each friend when it came to things like homework, classwork, projects, and especially tests. Also, I cheated over 95% of my tests and scored high. I really want to get into details, but I'm running out of time. So, like I said earlier, I created agreement with each friend. Now, we never had a discussion over who was doing what work, but I had specific friends for English homework, math, tests, etc. I was always involved in group chats for each class, and because I was friends with everyone, I was able to trade what I needed with what they needed. I would trade homework that wasn't even a class I was taking and for test answers. So it was like a win-win, and I always had backups just in case someone didn't have them. But those things mainly came in handy for homework, classwork. Now, when it came to things like tests, like I said earlier, I cheated over 95% of my tests and I always scored high. Also, by the way, I never studied, and let's get into how I did that. When it came to things like tests, I cheated over 95% of them and always scored high. Also,